You're watching LWT.
Good evening, the news and sport from ITN. Tonight's headlines: John Hume and Gerry Adams meet secretly again. They talk of a solid basis for peace. China rejects Clinton's warning on human rights as interference. Thousands march through London in protest against government health reforms.
And tonight's main sports headlines: the All Blacks romp to a record victory over the Scots at Murrayfield.
The SDLP leader John Hume and the Sinn Féin president Gerry Adams have resumed their secret talks on the future of Northern Ireland. In a joint statement, the two men said they were convinced their initiative could still lead to peace. But tonight, Downing Street said there was no question of either the British or Irish governments endorsing the Hume-Adams proposals.
John Hume's personal initiative in talking with Sinn Féin's Gerry Adams has been on hold for some weeks. But today, he and Mr Adams said in a statement they'd met again to discuss the British and Irish government's responses to their proposals. They said, "We remain convinced, despite all the difficulties, the process can be designed to lead to agreements which will provide a solid basis for peace." It comes after a leaked report yesterday which detailed proposals being drawn up in Dublin. These include an acknowledgement from London that Irish unity is a legitimate goal. The report irritated Secretary of State Sir Patrick Mayhew when he met the Irish Premier, Albert Reynolds, yesterday. That and today's development has also roused strong unionist feelings of being asked to give up too much.
People in Northern Ireland haven't held out against IRA terrorism for a generation to have concessions made to them in order to stop their violence in 1993.
Mr Hume briefed John Major on his proposals 2 weeks ago, and although they still remain secret, it's understood they are generally in line with the thinking in Dublin. With broad agreement emerging on the nationalist side, pressure's now building up on the government. It must make clear where it stands on the key proposals, as well as setting out its own ideas. Jim Buchanan, ITN, Belfast.
China has warned America not to interfere in its internal affairs after President Clinton told the Chinese president to make rapid progress on human rights. The two men had what's been described as very frank talks at the Pacific Nations Summit in Seattle.
It was all smiles and a handshake today. Presidents Clinton and Jiang Zemin of China dressed down for a boat trip. But Mr. Clinton had a dressing down of a different kind hours before when he questioned China's human rights record. Mr. Zemin gave him a 15-minute lecture on the theme, "Mind your own business."
There are human rights issues that are a barrier to the full resolution of normal and complete and constructive relations.
He stood by the Chinese president today as the 14 Pacific leaders joined in a new and ambitious trading bloc. They make up half the world's economy. The U.S. has a trade deficit with all but one.
It's the first time this has ever happened.
The U.S. used this unity today once again to pile the pressure on the Europeans, particularly the French, to sign a world trade deal. No more concessions, says the U.S. 108 nations have waited too long.
We want the Asian-Pacific region to be united, not divided economically, open, not closed, and committed to GATT. We want to seize this moment to try to get it done now.
GATT talks resume in Washington next week. These talks aired problems rather than solved them, but may be part of a crucial watershed in world trade and in ending the recession that has hampered it. Bill Neely, ITN, Seattle.
15,000 protesters, including health workers, politicians and show business stars, marched through London this afternoon in a rally against the government's health service reforms. They declared today NHS Emergency Day and diagnosed the health service as being terminally ill.
From across the country, they came to march on the streets of the capital. Health workers, trade union members and hospital patients. In Trafalgar Square, they heard messages of support from the world of show business. And heading the political lineup, Labour's deputy leader.
The message from this rally is that the National Health Service is of immense importance to every family in Britain. And that health service is at risk because of this government's neglect and because of their failure.
The TUC, which organised the demonstration, claims the NHS is facing a terminal illness because of the government's reforms. And despite bitterly cold weather, an estimated 15,000 people turned out today to add their support. Simon Harris, ITN, Central London.
The 12 children and a teacher killed when their minibus crashed on the M40 were remembered at a special service in Birmingham today. The service had been arranged before the tragedy to draw attention to the 300,000 people injured or killed on the roads in Britain each year.
The emergency services attended today's memorial at St Philip's Cathedral in Birmingham. The service had been planned for several months in memory of all road accident victims, but it took on a particular significance following this week's tragedy just outside Birmingham on the M40. The service adopted the theme, "We are all victims." Many of those who attended were relatives of people who died in road accidents. The vicar said he'd amended his original sermon when he'd heard about the school children.
What I say is in the light of the shock and sadness and pain that we all share at that accident and all accidents.
Pieces of paper shaped like oak leaves, each bearing the name of a road accident victim, were distributed around the altar. 13 of the papers had the names of the M40 victims. John Draper, ITN, Birmingham.
In China, 81 workers have been killed after a fire swept through a toy factory close to the border with Hong Kong. The victims, mostly women, were unable to escape because many of the factory's doors and windows were kept locked. The fire is believed to have started in a ground floor machinery room and engulfed boxes of dolls. Now with details of the day's sport, here's Graham Miller.
Manchester United completed their 8th successive league win to tighten their hold on the Premiership. Gary Pallister got the first against the last league side to win at Old Trafford 13 months ago. A tap-in from Guy Whittingham was enough to lift Villa up to second place, and Ian Wright's 16th of the season helped Arsenal to their first win at Chelsea for 19 years. That's 6 straight defeats now for Glenn Hoddle's side, who slipped to 5th from bottom. But at the top, United maintained their 11-point lead from Villa. Norwich drew at home to Man City. Queen's Park Rangers climbed to 4th after victory at Everton. Charlton are still top of Division 1 tonight after a 1-0 win over Peterborough, but second-place Tranmere came up against a revitalised Millwall side at the New Den. Australian international Dave Mitchell got the home side first after just 8 minutes. John Goodman added a second as Tranmere were comprehensively beaten. Leicester lost their 10-month unbeaten home record to lowly Oxford United. Substitute Alex Dyer scoring the winner just 3 minutes from time. So Charlton 4 points clear, but Crystal Palace have 3 games in hand over the top 2 clubs. Leicester dropping back to 6th after that surprise defeat. Motherwell are the new leaders in Scotland after their 2-0 win over Dundee United at Fir Park. They go 1 point clear with a game in hand over second-place Rangers, who won at Hibs. Aberdeen dropped to 3rd after their game at Raith was postponed. The All Blacks continued their 100% record on tour, thrashing Scotland 51 points to 15. The youngest player on the pitch, Jeff Wilson, scored 3 tries on his international debut.
New Zealand had never lost to a Scottish side and had never looked like losing this one. The first try, Matthew Cooper taking on 3 players to leave Mark Ellis clear, signalled their intentions. A relentless running game. Jeff Wilson, just turned 20 years old, got the second. And from then on, the All Blacks were rampant. In the second half, they put on an exhibition of free-flowing rugby. Frank Bunce finishing a move he'd started way back in defence. Then Jeff Wilson showed why he was awarded his first cap. His second try, the All Blacks' 6th. When he made his hat-trick, taking a reverse pass and bursting through the Scots' tired back line, he had the honour of taking his own conversion. No mistake there either. Final result, New Zealand 51, Scotland 15.
Finally, racing returned to Aintree today for the first time since the ill-fated Grand National, with a new starting gate. The 12:30 got off without a hitch thanks to the new high-tech system, but the Aintree circuit was back to its old unforgiving self. Only 2 of the 7 starters managed to finish.
That's it for now from Graham and me. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Hello, good evening. The cold weather is here to stay for several more days, but during tonight and for a time tomorrow,